Jesus sets the stage for us. And one of the most moving verses in the whole Bible. It's probably my favorite passage. It's something that I often speak over my life. I often imagine the Lord speaking it over me. And it's good to know, too, that it was written by Matthew, who was a tax collector. As we talked about last week, the stronghold of security and anxiousness and worry around money. Matthew, the tax collector, records what Jesus said in Matthew 11:28 through 30. Come unto me, all you who labor, one translation says. I think the verse is up on the screen. Think about that. Come unto me, all you who are laboring. We just had a couple of people in our church had a new little baby boy. They both had boys. Alex and Brittany had a little baby Brooks, and George and Megan had a little baby George, little G, I think they're going to call him. But yeah. But labor, I don't know what that's like, but I know I hear it's pretty difficult. But he writes from the vantage point of like worry about money and laboring for this and laboring for that and the pressure to succeed and the pressure to perform. And then Jesus comes and he stands before the people and he looks out over them just like he's looking out over us today. Because Jesus said, if we're two or three gather in his name, I'll be there. Mysteriously, Jesus Christ is walking around this room. And he's waiting for anyone who will open up their heart to him. He's waiting for anyone who will say, come to me. Lord, would you come? Would you help me with my overworking and my striving? And so he speaks to the people, and he's just like he speaks to us. Come to me, all ye who labor and are carrying heavy burdens. And notice this, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke, and the yoke in that day was a teaching. So this is kind of the idea. Are we following the teaching of the culture? I mean, you know, you can turn on the news, you can turn, there's a mindset that's behind the commercials. Is that not true? There's a mindset behind Hollywood and the movies. But there's a mindset that Jesus wants us to capture, because he said the truth will set you free. The mindset of the culture enslaves, the mindset of Jesus will set you free. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm meek and I'm gentle at heart. And notice this, and you will find rest for your soul. And I love this last line, for my yoke is easy, and the burden that I give you to carry is light. You see, Jesus never intended for you to carry this heavy burden. He never intended for life to be like a hard taskmaster. Though we work hard, we are free. We are a culture that's driven around success. And we often define success by how much money we make, what kind of car we drive, what neighborhood we live in, whose approval do we have, who we know, what we have. So we overwork and we strive, but let me ask you a question, at what cost? And that's the reality that we need to come to. At what cost is my overworking and striving costing me and costing the people that I love? So there is a massive overvaluing around success and money. And there is a massive undervaluing around time. And so today I want to talk to you about how you can recapture what God has for your life and how you can break the stronghold of overworking and striving. You ready for this? The first point is this: work from a place of rest. Work from a place of rest. And this is very significant because in the creation account, we learn that we are to work from a place of rest. We're not to rest from a place of work. And so in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, it says this, let us conceive a new creation. God's talking, and he says, let us make humanity in our image, fashioned after our likeness. Let us grant them authority over all the earth. And so God did just that. He created humanity in his image, created them male and female, and then God blessed them and gave them this directive, be fruitful and multiply, populate the earth. I make you trustees of my estate, so care for my creation. And then God surveyed everything that he had made, savoring its beauty and appreciating its goodness. Evening gave way to morning, and that was day 6. On the 7th day, so the 7th day would have been Adam and Eve's first day on the planet. On the 7th day, with the canvas of creation completed, God paused from his labor and he rested. Thus God blessed day 7 and made it special, an open time for pause and restoration, a sacred zone of Sabbath keeping, because God rested from all the work that he had done in creation that day. We work from a place of rest. So we're to value work, but we're not to value work over rest. We're to value rest over work, because we are to work from a place of rest. Adam and Eve's first day was one of enjoying God, enjoying one another, and resting. And so we work from a place of rest. You know, I don't have it on the screen, but I was thinking about an acronym for the word rest. R stands for relax. Did you know that I've learned from a spiritual standpoint, the more relaxed you are, the more God can work in your life? See, the more uptight you are, that prohibits God from working in your life. This is why meditation and being in the quiet and relaxing is so important. This is why learning to be a relaxed person is going to open you up more to the grace of God. Because if you're uptight, God can't break in. The R stands for relax. The E stands for enjoy. Did you know that in the Old Testament there were a significant number of time off, of celebration times, of feast times, Feast of Tabernacle, Feast of this, Feast of that, because God is a God who's into relaxing. God's a God who's into resting. So this may be a wake-up call for some of us. Some of us maybe have never learned this. You know, we were taught, you know, you're supposed to work hard, you're supposed to pull yourself by your own bootstraps, we're supposed to do this and do that and stay busy all the time. I mean, we just learned that, you know, sun up to sundown. And we never learned the value of resting. And yet the Scripture teaches us that we are not to rest from a place of work. We are to work from a place of rest. What this means is we prioritize rest first. Because if you try to fit in your things that you want to, you consider relaxing, that you consider restful, if you try to fit those things in after you do all the other stuff, you'll never fit them in. But if you fit them in first, in your calendar, in your mentality, in your heart, when people ask you about things, when you interview for jobs, you set yourself up for success. The rest, the R is the relaxing, the E stands for enjoy. Yes, God wants you to take time to enjoy life. You know, your first day on the planet, God didn't say, get to work. Get out there and work hard. And come back and tell me about the results. No, he said, hey, let's take a break. We'll get to that. We'll get to that tomorrow. Let's enjoy one another. The E stands for enjoy. And the E also stands for eat. We don't want to forget about eating. We're getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving. But I was also thinking about it stands for spiritual eating. Because one time Jesus said this, that I have food that you know not about. My food is to do the will of the one who sent me. And then the E also stands for exercising. That's very important. Or walking, doing something physical. And then the S stands for solitude. Time alone with the Lord. Sleep and silence. Silence is so powerful. We have so much noise going on in our culture, and we don't realize how much the noise is draining us. And it's robbing us of energy. The S stands for solitude and sleep and silence. And the T stands for time alone with people that you love. That's just a little acronym I threw in there for you. So we schedule in first those things that restore our soul. And because if you don't schedule them first, the culture will decide for you what your life will be driven around. And so here's a couple of things to think about. Is scheduling in solitude. Your first things first. You know, the other day I was feeling like that I had just been going and I was getting caught up in busyness again, because I would say probably overworking and striving has been my most significant stronghold. And so God has been breaking that in my life. And there was a challenge that I felt like God gave me in terms of solitude. And so Thursday I accepted that challenge again. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I don't feel like we should compare ourselves, so to speak. You know, you got to do what you feel like your challenge is. But here's something that God spoke to me very significant, because I'll tell you what, I was so refreshed after meeting that challenge. And the rest of my week has been radically different. This is why I feel energy today. I felt like God spoke to me and said that we don't challenge people enough to spend time with Him. That often we shortchange it. Because in His presence there's fullness of joy. At His right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Time alone with the Lord will transform your life. It will give you spiritual food that you know not about. It will be revolutionary. And we often, we think, well, we don't want to put too much on people. We don't want to run them off, or we don't want to challenge them too much, you know. Let me tell you something. You really need to challenge yourself in this area of solitude, because it is revolutionary. It is truly what you need. And then out of that, God's going to lead you to other things, such as getting enough sleep. This is very important. Many of us are sleep deprived. We're a sleep deprived culture. So we need to make sure that we get enough sleep, and that we, make the room dark. Don't have too many lights on. Don't drink caffeine before you go to bed. I mean, there's a lot of practical things that go into this too, isn't there? But we do need to get enough sleep if we're going to experience rest. And then we need to have enough meaningful conversations with those that we love and we care about, because we often get so busy that we are like ships passing in the night, and we don't have we long for those meaningful conversations. We want to know, and we want to be known. This is part of our DNA. This was part of what Adam and Eve, you need to realize this, that Adam and Eve had that on day 7. Sin had not yet entered into the human race. They were completely connected to God. They were completely connected with one another. The Bible even says this, they were naked and they knew no shame. But then all of a sudden sin crept in, and they had gone against what God had said to do. And there was a wall that was created, and then shame came in. And the very first reaction that they had was that they was to cover themselves up. And we need to realize that we are wired for vulnerability. We are wired for meaningful conversations. We are wired to stop and to take time to connect and to talk to one another. This is so very important. We schedule in these things first. These are not like afterwards. These are like first. See, we work from a place of rest. You heard the saying, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I learned that when I was a kid. Next slide. Exercise, running, walking. Whatever works for you. Yoga, bar, bikes, whatever. I mean, creativity, painting, gardening, building, playing music, designing. Yesterday I got out and worked in my yard. I got all the leaves up. I'm going to do it again. But I like to do that. I like to get out and cut the grass. I like to do work with my hands. I like to pick up my guitar and play. And I played a song this week out of my time Thursday that I want to share with you all at the end of this message that has to do with rest. It's very important that we have creativity in our lives, or we're going to be overworking and we're going to be striving. Reading. I go to a cabin once a month, and I read all the time. I'll read 3 hours at night in the little bed that I have. And then often in my everyday life, I read in the mornings, but then I sometimes find myself, again, I told you I struggle with overworking and striving. I'm a work in progress. But I often, find myself checking the emails or following up, or I've got my phone out, You all know the deal, right? You know the drill. And I don't read in the evening. Or maybe I'm watching too much sports or checking on this or checking on that. And then fun. God is the God of fun. And we need to schedule in things that are fun. And families that are driven around, often families, we see this today, they're driven around too many activities. And they're driven around the expectations in the culture. The family down the street's doing it. Their kids are playing 3 sports. Mine should do that. Their kids are taking piano lessons, guitar lessons, ballet, and all this kind of stuff, and we run ragged. When the guy that's my spiritual coach, we were talking about this past week, and he was talking about that really what families need is they need to be driven around devotional time together, where the kids and the family come together and they have some devotions together. And then they need to be driven around, this is huge, vulnerable time together. Well, that comes back to the meaningful conversations that we need to have. Kids long for that. Kids long to hear from their mom or from their dad what life was like growing up for them. Kids long to have you come alongside of them and when you see they're going through a tough time, instead of like hammering them and saying, when are you going to get this right? If you don't get your grades up, you're not going to make it. No, we come along beside of them and we're vulnerable, and we talk about what it was like for us. We have vulnerable time together. We have missional time together. We take our kids on mission trips, or we bring them out to the Thanksgiving outreach to serve, or we take time out to have, we have fun together. But no, if we are driven around so many activities, and we got to keep up with the culture, like whose drumbeat are we marching to? Well, that's what the culture does. That's what the school expects. And then we wonder why our kids end up on drugs, or we wonder why our kids end up working all the time and never wanting to come home and see us. Because I've grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. Avoid taking on too much. Don't overschedule yourself. This is a big one. I was thinking about this the other day because I did just that. Because often taking on too much is often driven around approval seeking. And it's often ego driven. It somehow feeds our ego in a very sick way. But remember, we've said before, the ego stands for edging God out. So the other day I had a 9 o'clock meeting, an 11 o'clock meeting, a 12:30 meeting, a 2 p.m. meeting, a 3:15 meeting, and then I had to get home for a 4 p.m. conference call. And I came scooting in the garage at 4 p.m. I made it, but I was running ragged. Does that make sense? Why? Because I overscheduled myself. And then I was on the phone. The guy I was on the phone was my spiritual coach, actually. We were on the phone, and I was actually talking about this, that I find myself, just trying to do too much. But here's why I found myself saying, because I had a 9 a.m. meeting, and I had an 11 a.m. meeting, and a 12:30 meeting, and a 2 p.m. meeting, and a 3:15 meeting, and then I was coming to talk to you at 4. It was almost like it was feeding my ego. Does that make sense? I could feel it as I was saying it. I work hard. See what I do? Is that really the life God has for you? Don't overschedule yourself. Many times the negativity that we feel is not that we don't enjoy what we're doing, or not that we don't want to connect with the person we're going to meet. It's the fact that we have overscheduled ourselves and we've taken on too much. Remember that Jesus said, my yoke is easy and the burden I give you to carry is light. There's a lightness he wants you to have about your life. And then rid yourself of toxic behaviors. And this is the last point. Rid yourself of toxic behaviors. Porn. It's all about how you spell relief, isn't it? See, if you feel such a need to get away and to escape, it means you're not relaxing enough. It means you're not resting enough. It means that you are not working from a place of rest. When we feel that, when we do the like TGIF, thank God it's Friday. You spent your whole work driven around work and success, and not working from a place of rest. Not working from a place of rest. We should be resting, relaxing, enjoying life, exercising, creativity, meaningful conversation. No, we're not. It's not perfect. Just like the other day, I was a little out of balance. But we're moving to a new place every day. And we're driven with a different identity. You know, my spiritual coach and I were talking about the people that often fall into the pattern of overworking and striving. It's an identity issue. Because their identity is driven around the model of success and the model of status and money. And money is a hard taskmaster. Success is a hard taskmaster. But people who are disciples and growing as disciples understand that their identity is not driven around that model. Their identity is driven around more fruit, which is character. See, it's more important not what I accomplish, but it's the person that I'm becoming. It's how I treat my wife. It's how I respond to my kids. It's how I respond to pressure when I get squeezed. Even like this morning, as normal, I'm in a hurry, right? And what does that do? That puts you in a bad mood. See, it's important to have margin in your life. Now, I did have some margin, but I stopped by Starbucks to get myself a little thing of yogurt because I haven't gone to the grocery store. Don't you all think that I'm always eating out. I try to do a balance of both and try to limit how much I eat out. But I haven't been to the grocery to stock up on my little bit of yogurt I like to get to eat the first thing in the morning. So I pulled in there real quick, and I'm standing there at the counter, and they're all they're waiting on the drive-thru folks, right? Y'all know the deal. But then I could tell they're frantic. There's like 8 people, man, behind the counter, and I'm just standing there waiting for someone to wait on me. And I found myself copying this attitude, and I almost like, hello. There was something in me that wanted hey, could I be waited on? Draw attention to it. Seek to understand rather than to be understood. I'm so glad I didn't do that. I might have driven off and they say, you know what, I think that was the pastor's sanctuary that was in here. They finally did come and wait on me. I got my order. I got to eat my yogurt while I waited on my short latte. And then I found out there was water on the floor. The express machines were leaking. And then I realized, they're under this different framework of mind. And I didn't realize that. Overeating, overspending, drinking to relieve stress. See, this is what this last point is. Is there one thing that God's going to speak to you about that He's telling you to stop? Sometimes in leadership training, we do a start-stop exercise where you write down all the things you feel like you need to stop and those things you need to start. Is there one thing that God is telling you to stop? Because it's toxic. It's not life-giving. And then, like watching too much TV. Rob Bell, who wrote the book Velvet Elvis, and he's written some other books. He used to be former pastor of Mars Hill Church in Granville, Michigan. But he said this: I read a lot because I don't watch TV. I actually heard him say that publicly when I went to a training that he did several years ago. I read a lot because I don't watch TV. Maybe we need to minimize how much TV we're doing. Too much time on Facebook or too much time on computer. And there's a big one, being on our phone all the time. Not turning it off and putting it away. See, you've got to learn to work from a place of rest. And you have to realize that the God who created you is giving you permission to work from a place of rest. Because he wants you to be refreshed. He wants you to bring joy and energy. He wants, because I've been working from a place of rest, I think that helped me this morning to respond with understanding. Instead of going in there and saying something that I shouldn't have said. And that's what God wants to do for you.